Hello everyone, welcome back. In this part, we're going to talk about APIs, what are they, how we can use them, and implement that in our JavaScript. So first of all, as you know, all of our applications contain front-end side and back-end side, which front-end is going to be our user interface that we show to our clients and users, and back-end is where the logic of our program is going to execute, and all of the works that we have with data is going to be in our backend side. But when we have something run and executed in backend and we want to have connection between of our backend and frontend to show that data, or in some cases that we have something in frontend and we want to send them to the backend, we need a connection here. So first thing, let's say here we have our data in our backend server. And when we run, we want those data to come here. And for that, we're going to have connection from our backend into our frontend. And let's say in the other hand, we have some forms in our frontend that we want to save the data of them into our backend. And for that, we need the connection from our frontend into our backend. So here, let's say we have this data right here, and when our front end wants it, it runs through the connection right here, and we can access that in the front end. And this time, let's think that this data is a data from a form inside of our front end. And when we submit that, it's come through the connection into our backend. The thing that does this work for us and responsible to this task is our API. So API that we have in the front end, let's say we want some data from our backend. It comes to the backend side, grab the data that we have executed or grabbed from the database in the backend side, and this API is going to come to front side again and pass that data into our front end. And of course, we need reverse of this, which let's say our forms data, again our API grabs that and comes to the backend and pass that data into our backend. The similar things to this system is large in the real life. If we want an example of that, we can have restaurant as example. So let's say here our backend is our kitchen right here, where our chef creates our meals. In the other hand, we have the front end, which is the table that our customers sit on there and order their meal and eat it. And between of the table and kitchen, we have our waiter, which is going to come to the table to see what is the order, grab the order and pass order to the chef, then waits here until chef makes the meal, and after that, grab the meal and come to the table. And this is the basic explanation of the API and what it does. But let's jump out into our code to see how we can implement these in our JavaScript. Here we're going to have two kinds of API. First one are the browser APIs that we can use, which are the functionality of a web browser that the user uses to have connection. And then we can have a server API, which is the functionality of a web server. For example, one of the APIs that we have, which uses our browser to complete a task, so it is browser API, is our history API, which we have covered in the last part, which if you haven't watched that, there's a link in the description and top corner that you can watch. And that is going to be our window.history. And here we can have our back to go back, and as same as this, we have our window.history.forward to go to forward URL and website we had. And of course, you know that we can delete this window and it still works. And this is the most basic of the browser API, because our index.js or our HTML file cannot run this. But when this connects with the browser allows us to use these functions. After this, a very useful browser API that we can use inside of our applications is our webStorage API, which is going to let us to save some variable inside of the browser of a user, which is some kinda similar to the cookie, but more advanced way. For example, let's say we have variable of name with the value of Tim right here. And we want to use this always inside of our website. Or let's say we have another variable of min age, for example, and this is going to be 18. And we want to use this one always again. So what we can do is that, as we learned in the last part, we use cookies to save this. Or another thing that we can use is use our local storage. And then inside of this, we use our setItem method, which this method itself going to grab two items from us. First one is going to be name of the variable that we have. For example, let's say we want to save this one. So we pass that in the string as min age, just like this, and then the value. And we want that to be 18 right here. So this is going to go and create variable inside of the browsers of the user and let us to use this whenever that we want. So let's have our index.html right here to be run with live server. And here let's select our div with the ID of div that we have right here in our JavaScript. So we use our document.query selector and we select our div with the ID of div with this syntax of CSS selectors. And here we want to make the inner HTML into our main age right here. As you see here, we got our 18. But because here we have defined our local storage item of min age into 18, if we open our inspect right here, and if we come to this application right here, here you can see that local storage in our storage part. And if we open this and click the URL, you can see that here we got min age to be 18 right here. And if we delete this one right here and refresh the page and again open our inspect and come to our application, again you can see that we got that one. And this is not going to be clear. So if we open another tab or close the connection and reconnect several days later, this is going to be here. And if we want to use this, let's say here we don't have these one, and here we want to show that min age that we have inside of the local storage into our use. So what we can do is we can use our local storage again, and inside of that, we're going to have our getItem method. And when we want to use this, we need to pass the key of the value that we have created. If you look here, we have the value of 18 with the key of min age. So if we want to access that, here we need to pass min age as string right here. And if we save this into variable of a, for example, and put the inner HTML of our div to this, and actually we need to have a right here, you can see that we got this 18 right here. By the way, that we never have anything and any assigning 18 value into anything right here. And as you know, we can refresh many times. It's going to be here or open in another tab. You can see that we got that 18 right here. After this, we have a bunch of other methods that we can use. For example, here in our local storage object, we have the property of length, which is going to say us how many numbers of data items that we have stored in the storage object. Or we can have this key method, which if we put any number right here, this method is going to return the name of that index key in the storage. So if we use 0 right here, as you see, we got the name of the min age. Or if we want to remove this min age, we can have the method of removeItem. And here, if we pass the name of our key, we can see that. So let's open our inspect that we can see here in application. You can see that we got this min age with the value of 18. And if we want to remove that, so we use this min age. And if we refresh, you can see that we don't have any value here after this. And if you have multiple items in your storage, you can remove all of them by simply using the clear method right here. After this one, we're going to talk about our third-party APIs, which are the same as our web server APIs. we have website of JSON placeholder, which if you visit, it's going to show you a bunch of fake APIs that you can use. For example, here, this is the API of the post that you can use, or you can have comments, albums, photos, to-dos, users, or other things. And these are the routes that we're going to cover and how we can use them. To grab some data from the web server to our front end, we're going to use our GET request. If we want to send something to the API, we're going to use our POST request. If we want to update something using API, we're going to use PUT request. And if we want to delete, we can use delete request. So in this video, we're going to cover this GET request right here. If we come to this users right here, you can see that this is a JSON file that we have right here, which contains some data about our user, which is going to be ID, name, username, email, and other things. And the URL of the API that we want to use is actually this URL right here. So we copy this and come to our code. Here, let's say we have our div in the variable of tag right here, and we don't want this inner HTML anymore. And down of it, we're going to use our fetch method to use our GET request on our API. So as you saw, we have this data in our JSON placeholder website, which is going to have some users for us. So if we want to have this, we need to have GET request on this URL. So here we use this fetch method right here, and inside of this, we simply paste the URL that we have copied. And because this is promise, we can use this dot then after that to do anything that we want from the data that we got from here. So in this line and this part, we grab the data from the URL, and here we can do anything with that. And pay attention, you can use this in only one line, but this is the good way to maintain and write code. And here we grab the data, we use arrow function, and then we simply console log the data into the console. So we use this data again here, and here if we open our console, you can see that we got some response. And if we open this, you can see that we got a bunch of items right here that we can use. But because our fetching data needs some time, we usually use the request that we have inside of a function. For example, let's say here we have the name of getData as our function's name, and we got these lines inside of it. And pay attention that we need to use this async right here because this is asynchronous. And when we grab our data right here, we want to set that into the variable of data right here. So we use this right here, and of course we need to use this wait, so we can wait for the response of the server to our request. And here in the next line, we can simply console log data that we got. And if you look at the inspect again and the console, actually we need to call our function. So we have this get data right here. You can see that again, we got our result right here. And pay attention that we can access to all of these properties of the object that we have. For example, let's say here we want to access the body. If we use, you can see that we got the body here. Or let's say we want the headers. You can see that this time we got the headers, and we can use anything with these. But as all of you expect, we don't want these items from our API. Actually, what we want is these data that we have. So what we can do with that is after we fetched our data using this API and our fetch method, we're going to use this dot then because this is promise as I told you. And here we want to grab the response that we got from our web server and API, which is going to be in our res variable right here. And we want to convert that to JSON. So we use this dot JSON right here, which is going to do that work for us. And after this, again, we're going to use another then, and this time, which we got the JSON data right here. So here we name our variable the data, and we simply want to console log that data. And now if we open our console in our browser, actually we need to pass data right here, you can see that we got this results right here, which contains the data that we want from our API. And actually, let's open this in larger scale. As you see right here, we got 10 items inside of an array, which all of them has the ID, name, username, email, and other things. And if we want to show them in the user interface and our HTML file, here we can have some codes. So when we grab the data right here, because that is array, we can use our map method on this, which is going to grab each item for us. And we want our document.write method right here. And we want that data to add into our HTML page. And actually, we need to use this E because we named that E right here. And as you'll see, we got names right here. And if we add break right here, so we use this BR tag, you can see that we got the names in different lines. And as same as this, we can get the ID, we can get the username, as you see right here, or other things. Let's say we want phones. You can see that we can get all of them. And if we change these to name right here, you can see the name. And if we grab the data that we got, you can see these are exactly those. So here we have this name as same as this. In the ID 2, we got this name, so we got this. So these are the data that we fetched from our API. Please give a like and subscribe to catch next videos.